Hello everyone, this is update for May 15, 2023, day 446 of the war, end of the date update. This is also update from May 12, 13 and 14. Sorry for such a long sort of break, but there wasn't terribly much to report either, so I'm just going to focus today mostly on the military situation, military updates. So first of all, what happened is Russian forces attacked ammunition depots and they were successful. I would say extremely successful in Khmelnytsky, slightly west of Khmelnytsky. This is regional center here, and also in Ternopil. So that by itself, the importance of that is, it looks like there were large amounts of ammunition that were destroyed there. So that by itself may delay this offensive. In addition, as you can see, Ukrainian president is doing the tour of Europe to get more military equipment, and that probably by also indicates that the offensive is going to happen probably early June. So giving the situation with the ammunition, what happened there, but that one is probably the amount of damage is extremely significant. So by itself, it's probably, if you just include that probably delays for a couple months. But I don't think Ukrainian top has that time. There is internal pressure, there is external pressure, so more likely they probably will be pressured into something sometime early June, maybe, say, if I were to extend, maybe June. The other important event that happened, I believe it was on Saturday. So there were 4 Russian aircraft that were destroyed on the Russian territory, about 40 to 50 kilometers from Ukrainian border. So there were 2 helicopters that were destroyed. I think it were Mi-8, both of them, and then also Su-34 and Su-35. So I'm gonna explain what this is. This is basically a group. This is not just random aircraft. This is call it, like, you can call it a team. This is how they operate. The goal was to actually attack Ukrainian assets, military assets on Ukrainian side. So the Su-34 is a tactical bomber, so that it was supposed to probably launch those gliding bombs from the Russian territory, and they would just basically destroy whatever the target was on Ukrainian side. Then Su-35 is the fighter that was supposed to cover this Su-34 that was doing bombing mission. And then one of the Mi-8 was had the radio electronic warfare equipment on it, so basically to protect from that perspective this entire group. And the last one was is evacuation helicopter. If any of this aircraft vessels is going to get shot down, they will fly to pick up surviving crew members. So this is this sort of the whole team, and it was all shot down very cleanly within a short period of time, where nobody survived from any of this aircraft. With helicopter, this is sort of normal, when most of the time nobody survives, with exception actually of Ka-52, which I mentioned, which is excellent helicopter. But the other part is Su-35 and 34. They should be survived. This normally pilots survive. This is sort of more than 50% chance of surviving. The fact that none of them survived is, again, very unusual, and the whole situation, how this whole team was cleanly wiped out, um, tells one. There's could be a lot of hypotheses, but one of the hypotheses that's I would say my base case scenario is that Ukraine somehow got passive raiders, and basically they're the most kind of dangerous type of raiders because you never able to understand that you sort of being watched by the raider. Ukraine had that technology in the 90s. In actually the team that was working on that was based in Donetsk. Then they fled Donetsk once Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014. To know exact whereabouts of that team, but the point is that Ukraine had that technology, had the know-how how to make it. Actually, Ukraine attempted to sell that technology to Iraq in the 90s, and then Ukrainian president was slapped very painfully by the US for attempting to sell it, because that would make a lot of, let's say, Western aircraft, they're extremely vulnerable. And so it wasn't known that Ukraine has passive radars, but from this action, this is the most plausible explanation for what happened. Because with a regular radar, the result would not be so clean, and where those two pilots in Su-34 and Su-35 that they all did not survive, because I believe Su-34 has actually two pilots. So it's so this is the first sort of kind of point. The second one is based on all of this. I have sometimes questions about their sort of air war. So this is the answer for you, that that aircraft are essentially removed from the picture of this war. Before, they were sort of sporadically used by both sides, and now it's very clear you cannot really, it not even behind the the sort of front line. You have to. It's essentially aircraft is no longer usable unless this is sort of kamikaze suicidal attacks, which actually Ukrainian side sometime does, and then it results in large losses of for the most part those Su-25, the the assault aircrafts. So again, so this is what this really means, that Air Force is essentially not an actor in this war. Even from far away, you cannot launch these gliding bombs, which were inflicting quite a bit of casualties on the Ukrainian side. So this is also becoming sort of, as I said, out of the picture. The another conclusion out of this is extremely important for the future offensive, if this is where to happen here in Zaporizhya region, where it's very flat. There is essentially no trees, no cover, very sparsely populated, very few like towns or villages, and even those are very small and everything. So essentially, air superiority is extremely critical when you attack in this area. And if this means that Russian air superiority is under big question at this point, and in my view is essentially gone, and so this is another barrier that has been lifted or removed for the success of Ukrainian offensive in the Zaporizhya region, or basically all of this sort of south of Ukraine, essentially, because it's the same kind of like climate zone, the same topographic zone, and so on. So from all perspective, it's essentially very similar. So again, this is increases chances of successful Ukrainian offensive. Plus, as I said before, Ukraine has this uh, sh- uh, Shadow Storm or whatever, Scalp, or this rock missiles from the UK. Plus, it looks like France is gonna give them as well, because this missile is joint venture between France and UK. So the boat is just different names. One uses Scalp, the other one using what is that, Storm Shadow or something like that. Essentially, the importance of those missiles is that they can damage this Crimean, or well, not totally destroy, but significantly damage Crimean bridge that makes it unusable, and which is, by the way, for the record, it has been repaired and it's functional now. So as you can see, Russia is able to respond to the damage, and they managed to repair it in the most difficult conditions, because it's a stormy time. The winter is a stormy time in the Black Sea. So as you can see, they managed to fix that problem. Let's put it this way. Now actually I'll discuss another topic once we get to the specific section of the battlefield. So now I'm gonna walk through the front line in a clockwise fashion, as I always do, starting from very north. So the situation along the state border remains intense, remains the same, high intensity of adversarial actions, all sorts of adversarial actions from both sides. Now let's move to the North Lugansk front line. One thing that is not shown here, but there is some military action. There's about like 10 kilometers north of Kupiansk. Looks like Russian troops managed to gain full control of their eastern side of the Skil River. This is, in a way, non-event. It's just a tactical sort of achievement, but it's even, I would say, skeptical to call it achievement, because the western bank is on the high ground, and their eastern one is flat and low. So essentially, it's even if you control it, you cannot really be there, because you immediately subject to artillery fire, and you're just gonna get destroyed. Your losses are gonna be extreme. Otherwise, this section of the front line is, I would say, dead. Now let's move to North Donbass section of the front line, where the whole action is going on. So the northern sector of it is quiet. Not much is going on. Let's actually look at the more detailed map. I made sort of final update. So as you can see, essentially Russian troops, or specifically Wagner mercenaries, controlling essentially all of the town. Ukrainian side is holding on to very, very small percentage of the western outskirts of the town. During this time, the advances for Ukrainian side were that they managed to clear up this bridgehead, as I said before, and then they managed to liberate this forest where I show here. So this forest is now fully under Ukrainian control. So this ensures, as you can see, better situation on the edge, on the tip of this salient. That's essentially here, western Bakhmut or Romova. And also Ukrainian troops advanced here, south of this artificial lake. So again, Russian side, because as you can imagine, lake border is where the lower point in the ground on Earth is. So essentially, Russian troops are in the worst situation, because they are on the lower ground, Ukrainian troops on the high ground. So this is creates opportunity for further advances in this direction of Berkhivka and so on. But the action mostly at this point is on their southern flank of this salient. by Ukrainian side. Then Russian troops trying to do some counterattacks, which so far were not successful. The only success for Russian side is in Bakhmut for Wagner mercenaries specifically. But that one is happening at a snail's pace, and they may continue doing that for another at least a month. We'll see for how long anything is possible. But the other important part I would like to mention, the intensity of the fight is extreme. So the commander of the Force Brigade, regular Russian Army Force Brigade, was killed in action, actually with his troops. To be fair, that's speaks positively about this commander, that he actually looks like he was quality commander, and so it's obviously positive for Ukrainian side that Russian side has fewer of the high quality commanders, which Russian army for sure does not have many at all. They very few of those. So the loss, that's why the loss is even more important. There was also, I would call it like, there was also killed, what's the best term? I guess you can call him commissar in the terms of World War II for the Second Army Corps, which is Force Brigade is part of. So what's happened is that they were on the front line, and they were pushing their troops to counterattack, or apparently, so there was a Ukrainian attack. They were trying to counterattack, and didn't work out for them. They, as we all know now, they did. So it again, what the importance is that this Force Brigade is essentially not capable at this point of any offensive action and very limited defensive actions. I would say you can just say that that it needs to be removed from the front line for refitting. So essentially, it's severely damaged. Probably the best way to describe it. So as you can see, so far Ukrainian troops managed to inflict significant losses on the Russian side here on the flanks. However, on the tip, as I mentioned before, the Russian Wagner mercenaries specifically still inflicting severe losses on Ukrainian side. In terms of this fight, as you can see, it's becoming very visible. The fight between the head of manager of the Wagner group, and I want to stress, he's just the manager. He is not he's not the owner, because that Wagner group is really extension of the Russian government. Just want to make it clear. So because there is, talks about this is private army, it's not a private army. It's just extension of Russian government, Russian intelligence service, so that they use it where they cannot use regular Russian army, right? So this is what it is. So this is basically internal infighting that become very visible, because this is essentially fight between Russian military and Russian intelligence community, essentially. That's the best way to describe it. There's probably much more color to it, but if I sort of primitivize it and simplify it, that's the best way to describe it. And given that Russian president is coming from Russian intelligence community, not from the army, so he kind of allows this, call it, outlandish behavior by the head of Wagner group, even though this is typically in Russia this is not allowed, and you would be quickly removed and so on if this was someone else in other circumstances. But the key point here is really that this whole fight, the objective reason for the fight, is shortage of the ammunition. There is not enough ammunition, and this is basically fight for the limited resource by both sides. And there's other part is there is a shortage of um, of soldiers, and there is a fight for that as well. So there are two, resources that are in short supply on the Russian side, and so this is essentially a fight between two groups for those two resources. Um, and then I want to mention something else is that probably Russia will have another mobilization sometime soon. I mentioned sometime probably early March or February that Russian government is trying to recruit like 400,000 soldiers, and basically paid soldiers. I don't know whatever the term is. Contract soldiers, I guess that's probably the best name, into the army. That I was very skeptical from very beginning about that effort. So that effort obviously predictably failed. So now they are facing situation where they really need to go back to the well and do conscription, basically mobilization, what was done in September of last year. The only question is, will they be forced to do it in advance of Ukrainian offensive, or this will happen as a result of significant losses or failures as a result of Ukrainian offensive? So similar to what happened last year. Basically, the only question is: are they going to be reactive, or are they going to be proactive about it? Looks like they're going to be probably more reactive than proactive about it. That's all for this section of the front line. This is just shows you since March 15 how the front line changed. As you can see, that's what's going on. This is the way it is right now. It's much, how to say, much better. Oops, sorry. Much better for Ukrainian side. Much more sort of, I would say, defendable. Let's put this way. So this is just the same. Now let's jump to the central Donbass front line. Things here are somewhat on pause, pretty much also getting quieter. The only place where there's still Russian attacks is Marinka, which Russian side is still trying to capture. This is just remind you, the battle for Marinka started literally on April 24, 2022, the first day of the war. And this is truly World War I type of situation, like Verdun or something like that. And there's very little to show for that on the Russian side. Otherwise, as you can see, in preparation for this upcoming offensive, Russian military command is accumulating resources, stopping this senseless attacks, and they accumulating reserves to counter potential Ukrainian breakthrough. And accumulating also ammunition. As I said, there is a shortage of that on the Russian side. And then the last section of the front line is Zaporizhya. At this point, it is quiet. There is not much to share about it. So, as I said, this is the most likely area where Ukrainian command will seek decisive victory at this stage of the war. Thanks for watching, and till next time. Bye bye.